Om Ajnanatimrandasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitamena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitamena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Sri Gurum Sri Yutapadakamalam Sri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Sri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Sri Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Sri Vishakhanvitanscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishabhanusute Devi Pranamami Haripriye Vanchakalpatarubhyasya kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivas Adi Gaur Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Namo Namo Aniruddhaya Hishikesha Indriyatmane Namaha Paramahamsaya Purnaya Nivritatmane Swarga Pavarga Dwaraya Nityam Suchi Sade Namaha Namaha Hiranya Viryaya Chaturhotraya Tantave. Hare Krishna. We are continuing our discussion of the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. And in the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, we covered up to chapter 4. And the topic of chapter 4 of the first canto was specifically setting the stage for further discussion on the topics of Srimad Bhagavatam. So the inquiries by the sages, specifically Shaunaka Rishi of Sutta Goswami, was wanting to know the characteristics of the speaker, wanting to know the motivation of the person who was hearing the Srimad Bhagavatam, wanting to know the reason for Srila Vyasadeva himself to begin composing the Srimad Bhagavatam. So at that stage, we looked at in the previous session the several qualifications that are required, and we also looked at why Srila Sukadeva Goswami was particularly qualified. It was very interesting to note as to the qualifications of Sukadeva Goswami and the qualifications of Parikshit Maharaj and the process of hearing and the result as well. Now, in chapter 5, we will be focusing on the instructions which were given by Sri Narada Muni to Srila Vyasadeva. Sri Narada Muni is the guru of Srila Vyasadeva. So, in times when a disciple is very specifically challenged or has to take on a very special work, there is intervention by the super soul in the form of the guru. There is intervention by Guru Tattva. This is seen even in the case of practitioners of Bhakti Yoga, where we begin Bhakti Yoga by being enthused, by coming in touch with several personalities. These are Siksha Gurus. We hear from many Siksha Gurus, right? And then the Siksha Gurus inspire us, being instruments of Krishna. They attract us to Krishna and to the holy names. And then in the heart, when our own maturity and faith develops, the development of faith and maturity in terms of wanting to serve further is exemplified by a desire to surrender. So the surrender in itself is to be able to have faith deep enough to be able to sit at the lotus feet of one's spiritual master and to be able to receive instructions after submissive inquiry. Right? This is described by Krishna in 4.34 in the Bhagavad Gita. Right? Pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya. Then one hears from a qualified spiritual master. So what is the qualification of hearing from a spiritual master? It is deep faith. So faith in the heart is recognized by the super soul, And by recognition by the super soul, he manifests himself as a physical personality in front of us as Guru. And that Guru is the person who is meant to guide us and also receive service, as is the case with, to receive service as well. One moment, please. Right. So to receive service as well. So the Guru is specifically meant to receive service on behalf of Krishna, and he engages us in his service so that he could pass on the service to Krishna himself. So that is the main purpose of transformation that occurs within the heart, where when we develop a desire to surrender in a deeper fashion, when we develop a desire for wanting to know more, or developing faith that qualifies us as recipients of deeper knowledge, the Guru manifests externally to guide us. This happened in the case of Dhruva Maharaj. When Dhruva went away to the deep forest, and when he was in the forest and he was meditating in the forest, at that time he was alone, but with the sole objective of attaining the opulence of being able to take birth in such a way that he could occupy a primary seat on the lap of his father, and so on and so forth. You see, he had an objective which was decidedly material. There was no question about it. There was no question whatsoever. It was material. So it was a material objective which Dhruva Maharaj started out with. He did not have a spiritual master, but he was extraordinarily determined for his very young age, and he underwent austerities and determination. He just walked out. He received Siksha. The first Siksha which Dhruva Maharaj received was from his stepmother, who said that the only way you can sit on your father's lap is for you to take birth as my son in my womb. Practically, the stepmother was telling Dhruva Maharaj that you must die. She was envious. She said, you must die, take birth again, and then when you enter as my child, then you will have the ability to occupy the lap of your father. So practically she was saying that I don't want you to be on the planet. So this was the first Siksha. But she also said that you must approach the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Who else can give you that position? You see, you must approach the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So she instructed him out of enviousness, but she gave him the right instructions in terms of whom to approach. So the first Siksha was received from the stepmother by Dhruva Maharaj. The next Siksha was received from his own mother. His mother, being of such elevated quality, did not deny the stepmother's instructions. You see, we have a tendency that if we hear good things from people whom we do not like, we have a tendency to reject that as well. You see, the normal tendency is to reject even good things from people whom we like. Whom we do not like. If someone is resentful, or someone is a person whom we do not appreciate, do not respect, even good quality and good things which are being said by such a person is being rejected by us. You see, which is very common to see. But here you can see the extraordinary character of Dhruva Maharaj's biological mother, that she was very clear. She said, yes, your stepmother is right. You must approach the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is the one who is most worshipable. So reaffirming the instructions of the previous Siksha Guru, who was a stepmother. So he received this Siksha, and then he walked away from home, and he was in search of the Supreme Lord, so that he could ask him for the boons that he wanted. He did not have a spiritual master. However, there was this particular determination and this faith in his heart, in the words of his mother, that by calling upon the Supreme Lord's name, he would be able to approach the Supreme Lord, and he would be able to get whatever he needs. There was faith. So this faith qualified him to receive a guru. Because of his extraordinary age and determination, and also because he was born to the emperor of the planet at that time. So he was very influential. Dhruva Maharaj's future was to influence an entire planet. And as a consequence, Dhruva had to be given special instructions. So the moment the super soul within Dhruva's heart recognized that there was great determination, there was faith, he sent forth Sri Narada Muni. saying, okay, now here's a particular person who is very qualified. He needs your assistance. He needs your blessings. So after doing so, what we are trying to say here is that the same thing applies to us. When we develop faith by coming in touch with several Siksha gurus, we develop faith, and then we develop deeper faith in being able to surrender. At that time, Krishna from the heart manifests himself externally as a guru who could guide us. So whenever there is despondency, whenever there is a question of wanting to do something extraordinary for the Lord, wanting to surrender, wanting to engage in transcendental activity, there will always be help. There will always be help. There will always be assistance provided by the Supreme Lord. There will always be assistance. So this chapter 5 in the first canto is very specifically focused on the assistance provided to Srila Vyasadeva. Srila Vyasadeva himself is an incarnation of the Supreme Lord. However, he is here and he has a guru. Everybody has a guru. When Krishna and Balaram were on the planet, they had a guru. When Lord Rama and his brothers were on the planet, they had a guru. Everybody has a guru. Okay, when they have to perform Leela here, they have to have a guru because there is a system. You see, they have to render service. So Krishna doesn't really speak and does not do, he does both. He speaks and he also acts according to whatever he says. So that is the situation in chapter 5. So you have Narada's instructions on Srimad Bhagavatam for Vyasadeva, which is chapter 5. So we're going to begin and then we will read a few verses. The general theme will appear from the translations themselves, and then we will explain the theme, and then we will continue further until we reach a point where we believe that the subject matter requires a totally focused class. Okay, so the theme today is very special. I can possibly talk about the theme and then we'll get into it. Before we get into the theme of discussion, which is the subject matter of instructions given by Sri Narada Muni to Vyasadeva. And these instructions were in the form of solace. He was actually pacifying Srila Vyasadeva because Srila Vyasadeva was confiding his heart in a confidential manner. He was confiding. And then that confidential exchange, his guru is practically giving him instructions after receiving input. Okay? But before we understand this exchange, we'll have to understand the subject matter of this exchange as well. Then we could read through the translations given by Srila Prabhupada and we will understand it fully. So there is a certain step-by-step process to understand consciousness. You see, consciousness is the source of all thoughts. If someone has a thought, it has come because of a certain degree of consciousness. So consciousness is primary. From consciousness and the quality of consciousness, based on whether the consciousness is in the mode of goodness, consciousness in the mode of passion, consciousness in the mode of ignorance, consciousness mixed with passion and ignorance, you develop certain thoughts. From these thoughts, ideas develop. You see, from consciousness you have thoughts. From thoughts, ideas develop. From ideas, one begins to share such ideas. Words develop, and from words, one begins to act on such words. Action comes. From action and repeated action, one develops habits, and from habits, one develops character. So there's a certain sequence: consciousness, thoughts, ideas, words, action, character. Habit, character. So now in this particular sequence, we notice that everything starts with consciousness. And consciousness itself can broadly be classified by transcendental pursuers of transcendental knowledge, specifically those who are studying devotional service and bhakti yoga, into perhaps 4 different parts. We have the mode of goodness, mode of passion and ignorance mixed together, and then you have the mode of ignorance. 4 different parts of consciousness, 4 different classifications of consciousness. So these classifications of consciousness themselves further develop into objectives. Those who are in the mode of goodness seek the objective of liberating themselves from the clutches of material energy. So those who are in the mode of goodness belong to the Brahmana Varna, because Brahmanas have the objective of wanting to liberate themselves. Moksha is the objective, primary objective. Those who are in the pure mode of passion, predominant mode of passion, so to speak, they have the objective of wanting to be very, very passionately strong about executing dharma. Executing their duty becomes extraordinarily important for those who are in the pure mode of passion, or the predominant mode of passion. Predominant passion motivates one towards dharma. So the Kshatriya is the Varna who comes forth from a consciousness which is predominated by passion. Okay, they are very passionate about achieving the dharma. They are focused on the ayana, or direction of executing dharma. And then you have the third class, where there's a mixture of passion and there's a mixture of ignorance. It's a combination. Such consciousness motivates one towards wanting to accumulate wealth. Okay, why? They have all kinds of attachments. So they have a tendency of wanting to accumulate wealth. And the third class of personalities are businessmen, right? And their objective is artha. The fourth level of consciousness, which is tamasic, motivates one to simply maintain themselves: eating, sleeping, mating, defending. That is the motivation of the fourth level, which is tamasic: eating, sleeping, mating, defending. And that prompts one to action which is equated to that of a Shudra. Right. Now, depending on the four different levels of consciousness, one also develops desires, one also develops certain kinds of action. So in all these four different levels of consciousness, one is dissatisfied. So why is it so? Because for most part, one can understand where they are by observing their focus. Okay, if one is extraordinarily focused in lamentation of whatever is missing, they exist in the past. Something is missing in their lives, or there is lamentation if something is taken away. For instance, if livelihood is taken away, or if wealth is lost, there's great lamentation. Then you can understand that they are Shudras. You can understand. It is Shudras who cannot tolerate such tribulations. That is the reason why there's such lamentation of, even in our age today, even amongst devotees, or even amongst the devotee community, we will notice that there is great stress whenever there is upheaval in the job front, because we are being trained to behave like Shudras. There's a lot of lamentation. There's a lot of lamentation in our existence. So the Shudras have lamentation, and let us look at the Brahmanical life. If we look at the Brahmanical life, where the Brahmanas themselves, their objective is moksha. And what is moksha? Moksha is practically being able to cross over from material energy into spiritual energy. Brahma Bhuta Prasannatma. Unvariegated transcendence. It's a very happy state, Brahma Bhuta Prasannatma. The mode of goodness is very happy, by the way. The mode of goodness is a happy state, is a very happy state. One who crosses over the mode of goodness and has an objective of crossing over into spiritual energy, and has the objective of moksha, is also not completely satisfied, or rather, they still have a lot to desire. So on Shudras, they are always going to be lamenting. And the other Varnas will also be lamenting at some stage or the other. There's always the dearth of them being able to execute their functions. There's lamentation, and there is a lot of despondency. The Brahmanas, who have the objective of moksha, they have a lot of despondency as well, because even if they cross over, they are happy, but what they feel. One moment, please. When they cross over, from one stage to the other, when they go into the spiritual sky, even when they are in the spiritual sky, there is still motivation for a higher level which can be attractive to them. How is it seen? It is seen by the example of Sukadeva Goswami. Sukadeva Goswami was in the liberated platform. He was completely liberated. He had nothing to do with material energy, but he was completely motivated by the hearing of Srimad Bhagavatam. You see? Why was he motivated by the hearing of Srimad Bhagavatam? What is the message which is being given to us? The message that is being shared to us is the fact that if Sukadeva Goswami, who is in the liberated platform, is actually in a position of being able to develop deep, deep happiness and pleasure by coming in touch with Bhagavad Katha, then what does it say about the objective of liberation, moksha? It says that the objective of liberation or moksha itself has a few things which it requires for it to be fully satisfied. It is a lack of satisfaction in one sense, even at the highest level of moksha, which prompts Sukadeva Goswami to develop pleasure in coming in touch with Srimad Bhagavatam. Srimad Bhagavatam is pleasurable to even a liberated soul. What to say of someone who is lamenting? Now, given all these categories of objectives of souls, they can pursue the life of a Shudra and attain the objective of eating, sleeping, mating, defending. They can pursue Artha and be a very strong businessman. Okay, but there is a mixed mode of passion and ignorance. There will be lamentation even in that. They can pursue the life of a Kshatriya in wanting to do duty, but they can fail in such duty and gain nothing. Then they can again be a Brahmana who attains moksha even. He may attain moksha, he may be successful, but even after attainment of such, he is not going to be satisfied, because even at the liberated stage, there is a little bit of despondency. There is a lack of variegatedness. There is no sambandha. You see, it is like going across to the spiritual sky, but not knowing everything about Krishna. Going across to the spiritual sky and being situated in an unvariegated platform, Brahman. That is something which leaves a lot to earn for. And that is what was seen with Sukadeva Goswami and the Kumaras. They reached the platform of moksha, but yet they were wanting to experience something even more. When they came in touch with transcendental potencies of the Lord, when they came in touch with the Srimad Bhagavatam, when they came in touch with devotional service, it enthused them. So devotional service is meant for those who are liberated. That's the conclusion. Devotional service is meant for, or is worthy of, an objective for even those who are liberated. Those who are liberated should pursue devotional service as an objective, and that would give them a tremendous amount of impetus. It would be a source of extraordinary pleasure. That is the primary message. The primary message is that if you are a Shudra, Vaishya, Shudra, Kshatriya, the cause of wanting to pursue devotional service is extraordinarily important, because it is guaranteed that there will be lamentation. It is guaranteed. It is guaranteed that there will be lamentation, there will be despondency. If one pursues liberation and becomes liberated, even in such a stage, one will not experience variegated knowledge. They will not have complete sambandha gyan of the relationship with Krishna. Without knowing that, they would still be yearning for something higher. That particular situation was seen with Sukadeva Goswami, where he was liberated, but even though he was liberated, he became extraordinarily attracted with the Srimad Bhagavatam. Srimad Bhagavatam is pure devotional service and can attract those who are liberated. Therefore, the conclusion is pure devotional service is the pursuit of those who are liberated. So all of us who are a part of Lord Chaitanya's movement have already been given the opportunity of engaging in Bhagavad Dharma. Our opportunity is to engage in Shuddha Bhakti. We have already been given extraordinary amount of information about Raja. We have been given extraordinary amount of information about the process of attaining Raja. So we are already far beyond the objectives of dharma, artha, kama, moksha. We have already gone beyond that. We are not talking about paramapurushartha. This particular artha or objective is attractive even to those who are completely liberated. This is attractive to those who are even completely liberated. So that is the primary message that is being given in the form of the dialogue between Sri Narada Muni and Srila Vyasadeva. Let us read through it and we'll come to a conclusion after such. Suto vacha atatam sukamasina upasinam brahashravaha devarishih praha viprarshim vinapanismayaniva. Sutta Goswami said, thus the sage among the gods, Devarishi, sage among the gods, Narada, comfortably seated and apparently smiling, addressed the Rishi amongst the Brahmanas, Vedavyasa. So Sri Narada Muni is addressing Sri Vedavyasa. Narado vacha parasarya mahabhaga bhavatah kachit atmanam paritushyati sarira atmamanasa eva. Addressing Vyasadeva, the son of Parasara, Narada inquired, are you satisfied by identifying with the body or the mind as objects of self-realization? The body and the mind as objects of self-realization are the subject matter of the fruitive section of the Vedas. The fruitive section of the Vedas, the Karma Kanda, what are they talking about? The Karma Kanda is talking about rituals of all kinds of rituals from which you can derive certain pleasures for the body, or you can develop certain powers which will actually enliven the mind. So Sri Narada's first question is, are you satisfied by identifying with the body or mind? And he is asking Srila Vyasadeva, are you satisfied? Because you wrote literature. You practically compiled the Vedas. You broke the Yajur Veda into 4 Vedas. You broke it into Yajur, Rig, Sama and Atharva. These 4 Vedas deal with the subject matter of fruitive activity. Since they deal with the subject matter of fruitive activity, where someone arranges something for the purpose of attaining something else, such activity has to do with pleasure for the body or pleasure for the mind. So the question is, are you happy by identifying with the body and the mind? Next statement. Jigyasitam sushapannam apite mahad adbhutam kritavan bharatam yastvam sarvartha paribrahmitam. Your inquiries were full and your studies were also well fulfilled. And there's no doubt that you have prepared a great and wonderful work, the Mahabharata, which is full of all kinds of Vedic sequences elaborately explained. So again, very important for all of us to realize, because you see, all of us are working. We are working as professionals in the corporate world, or we have objectives within the corporate world of attaining various promotions and so on and so forth. So this is very important, this dialogue between Narada Muni and Srila Vyasadeva, where Narada Muni is asking Srila Vyasadeva that you wrote about satisfying the body, you wrote about satisfying the mind, you in fact qualified it. You spoke about all the siddhis, attaining of various powers. You spoke about attaining all kinds of riches, all kinds of opulences, creating of planets, even becoming the king of planets, and so on and so forth. Right? Then the next statement is, your inquiries were full and your studies were also well fulfilled. Your inquiries in that matter were full. Practically, what was given by Srila Vyasadeva in the 4 Vedas for the attainment of the Purusharthas of Dharma, Artha, Kama and Moksha were full. They were completely comprehensive. They were very efficient, very unlike what we see in the modern world. Those were objectives that could be fully realized. It was not half-baked knowledge. It was fully available for people of those ages who had access to such knowledge to be able to perform sacrifices, or to have yogic power to be able to create planets for further enjoyment and so on and so forth. It was all fully available. So Sri Narada Muni is emphasizing that it was not partial. You did not leave some work related to the body or to the mind in the 4 Vedas partially. You completely provided all knowledge. It was full. Your inquiries were full and your studies were also well fulfilled. And there is no doubt that you have prepared a great and wonderful work, the Mahabharata. The Mahabharata, which is the Shastra, is the practical exposition of how the Vedas can be applied. So there are many instances of sacrifices, many instances of attaining powers. For example, Mother Kunti was blessed by Durvasa Muni to be able to invoke the presence of demigods to beget children. Right? She could call upon any demigod and request a child, or request anything, but she requested a child. So Durvasa Muni gave her that benediction. So there are many examples throughout the Mahabharata where you will see extraordinary opulence being attained by those on this planet. People who are on the planet had access to the demigods. There were tremendous amount of interaction between the demigods and the human beings throughout the Mahabharata. This is the practical explanation of how fruitive activity, karmakanda, in the Vedas were applied and used by a certain class of beings with powers. Right? You had this whole conception of wanting to kill Drona. Drupada had enmity with Dronacharya because Dronacharya insulted Drupad. So what did Drupada do? He had a son, but the son was not qualified to kill Dronacharya. So he wanted to kill Dronacharya, and he wanted allies. He wanted a son. He wanted a progeny. So you see in the Mahabharata where Drupada engages in austerity, and he goes around to find a specific sage who has the ability to perform a sacrifice for him to be able to get a proper child who will be able to take up arms against Dronacharya, who was a very, very powerful warrior. As a result of such sacrifice, Draupadi was first born. Extraordinarily beautiful, she was born from the fire. Right? She was fiery because she was born from the fire. There was a lot of Agni Tattva in her body. That's why she had great affinity for Bhima. Arjuna won Draupadi, but she had great affinity for Bhima in terms of qualities. Both of them were very fiery natured. She was very fiery natured. She came from fire. And then there was Drishtadyumna. Drishtadyumna was the brother of Draupadi who appeared from the fire, and he appeared very specifically as an instrument to be able to take the life of Dronacharya. This is a practical example of fruitive activity as shared in the four Vedas, but exemplified in the Mahabharata as to how it is applied. Right. Then you had the birth of Jarasandha. Then you had the birth of so many other personalities, Shishupal. There are so many instances in the Mahabharata that you will read about, right, which are practically the application of the Karmakanda section of the Vedas. And everything was extraordinary. Extraordinary, right? People could obtain all kinds of boons from the demigods. So Sri Narada Muni is asking you, whatever you did, you did well. You also wrote everything, and then you explained it in a practical way in Mahabharata. Mahabharata is a practical explanation. It contains the Bhagavad Gita, but it also contains all this business of fruitive activity. It is all Vedic sequence. Now let's read into text 4. Jigyasitam aditam cha brahmayat tat sanatanam tatapi sochasi atmanam akratartaiva prabho. You have fully delineated the subject of impersonal Brahman as well as the knowledge derived therefrom. Why should you be despondent in spite of all this, thinking that you are undone, my dear Prabhu? So, Sri Vyasadeva, after compiling the Vedas, he also wrote the Brahma Sutras. The Brahma Sutras practically are the stage that arrives after one has completed the objective of fruitive activity and then realizes that fruitive activity itself is a cause of frustration and one has to pursue Brahman. So the Vedanta Sutras were written by Srila Vyasadeva. So Srila Narada Muni is saying, you have fully delineated the subject of impersonal Brahman. The Vedanta Sutras have the audience of the Gyanis. The Gyanis, the personalities with complicated thinking, who want to derive and who want to be able to leave the planet, who want to go beyond the material sky, as they are now understood that the material sky is extraordinarily problematic. They are the Gyanis. They are better than the fruitive workers. They are better. They are much better because their objective at least is above the material sky. So the Brahma Sutras had a target audience of the Gyanis, and the Gyanis, they had a lot of impetus by studying the Brahma Sutras so that they could attain impersonal Brahman. They could attain this so-called platform of Brahma Bhuta Prasannatma, coming in touch with Brahman, where they would be completely free of any material quality, and as a consequence, there would be happiness. So Sri Narada Muni is saying, okay, I can understand if you just did the Karmakanda section of the Vedas. I can understand if you compile the Mahabharata to give a practical application and the sequence of how the Karmakanda is applied. I can also understand all of that, but I'm also understanding that you gave enough subject matter for someone to go beyond the material sky, for them to be liberated, for them to reach impersonal Brahman. Then why are you sad? You seem to have done such a good job of satisfying the mind, satisfying the body, and then going beyond the mind and body and going beyond the material sky into impersonal Brahman. Why are you dissatisfied? That is the question of Narad Muni. Text 5. Vyasa uvacha asti evam sarvam idam tyoktam tatapi natma paritushchate me tanmulam avyaktam agadabodham prachamahe tvatma bhavatma bhutam. Sri Vyasadeva said, all you have said about me is perfectly correct. All this, despite all of this, I am not pacified. I therefore question you about the root cause of my dissatisfaction. For you are a man of unlimited knowledge due to your being the offspring of one who is self-born, of Lord Brahma. Self-born, he was self-manifest. Swayambhu, he manifested from the navel. He manifested in the lotus that sprung from the navel of Garbhodaka Shai Vishnu. So this is, Sri Narada is Lord Brahma's son. So he does not have a material cause in that sense for his birth. So you are an elevated person, you are full of transcendental knowledge, you are constantly glorifying the Supreme Lord. I need to know why, after all of this, I'm not pacified. Why am I so sad? See, this burden, the burden of coming in touch with matter, will become even more profound when one is coming in touch with transcendence. If one has the great good fortune of being associated with the movement of Lord Chaitanya, but then comes into the unfortunate circumstances of leaving the movement of Lord Chaitanya and wanting to go back to their old lifestyle, they would be miserable. They would be very, very, very miserable. You cannot come in touch with higher level of consciousness, higher level of thoughts, higher level of words, actions, habits. Experience that higher level of consciousness and then go back to doing what you are doing. If you ever try that, you will feel quite despondent. Srila Vyasadeva, because he had arranged for all of this, was despondent because this requires absorption. This requires a lot of absorption for someone to sit and compile the Vedas, compile the fruitive activities, the Karmakanda section, the 4 Vedas, compile all of that, compile the Brahma Sutras, which is just dry philosophical knowledge. The very thought of it, makes me feel tired of someone sitting down and doing all this. Srila Vyasadeva did a phenomenal amount of work in his lifetime, coming in touch with all kinds of activity which give pleasure to the mind, which give pleasure to the body, which ultimately liberate the body. But the very thought tires me, and I'm nobody, but I become tired even thinking about it. So you can imagine what would have happened to Srila Vyasadeva. Surely he feels quite despondent after doing all of this, ultimately to satisfy the mind, satisfy this decaying body, and then to ultimately satisfy and reach a platform of unvariegatedness where one does not know the sambandha, one does not know the existence of Leela, one does not know the existence of Nama, Rupa. What is the point? You see? So that despondency is what is being brought forth here. Vyasadeva is accepting Sri Narada Muni's statement, saying, yes, you have dissected all the activities that I have performed, and you have reached the conclusion correctly, aptly, that I've done this and I've done that, I'm dissatisfied. Text 6. Savai bhavan veda samasta guhyam upasito yat purushah puranah paravaresho manasaiva vishvam sujati avati atigunera sangaha. My Lord, everything that is mysterious is known to you because you worship the creator and destroyer of the material world and the maintainer of the spiritual world, the original personality of Godhead, who is transcendental to the three modes of material nature. So Srila Vyasadev's problem was not a material problem. Srila Vyasadev's problem was beyond the material problem. Srila Vyasadeva had written subject matter to the fullest accomplishment of material glory, of body and mind. All kinds of opulences could have been obtained by those who studied the Karmakanda if they were experts in doing whatever was required. Srila Vyasadev's problem was beyond the material world because he had written the Vedanta Sutra, which was for consumption of the Gyanis. So he had also gone beyond the material sky. So his problem, particularly, was even beyond the material sky. Okay, so he had a transcendental problem. So there can only be one person who can solve a transcendental problem. A transcendental problem can only be solved by someone who is of the same nature, but who has an even greater level of information about transcendence. Krishna is unlimited, Ananta. And to understand Krishna's glories, the more and more and more one is accomplished in knowing Krishna, the greater would be their propensity and ability to solve the problems of this material world. The problems of the material world cannot be solved by those who are very well versed in material science. It has to be solved by those who are of a higher consciousness. Right? It has to be solved by those who are of a transcendental nature. The problems faced by someone who is also transcendently situated, like Vyasadeva, can only be solved by someone else who is also transcendently situated but of a higher level. Sri Narada Muni, his guru. So he is saying that you are the worshipper of the original personality of Godhead, who is transcendental to the three modes of material nature. So my problems are of a higher nature. Only you can resolve those. Text 7. Tvam paryatta narka eva trilokim antascharo vayurivatma sakshi paravare brahmani dharmato vrataihi snatasya me nyunam alam vichakshavam. Like the sun, your goodness can travel everywhere in the three worlds, and like the air, you can penetrate the internal region of everyone. And as such, you're as good as the all-pervasive supersoul. Please therefore find out the deficiency in me, despite my being absorbed in transcendence under disciplinary regulations and vows. So Srila Vyasadeva was observing extraordinary discipline. He was living a life of vows. He was engaging in charity. He was engaging in works which were extraordinarily beneficial to all other human beings. Right? All of these were very good activities. Right? And he's saying Sri Narada Muni's quality is that he is a pure soul. You are of the same quality as the super soul. You are a pure soul. You have the ability to penetrate the hearts of others because of your purity. You have the ability to travel wherever you like, just as much as Surya's rays, penetrate every corner of the existence. You have the ability to go wherever you want. You can penetrate the hearts of anyone. And you are fully aware of what my condition is. So you are fully qualified to be able to instruct me. And he's also saying that, I have done everything. I've been absorbed in transcendence. And I've been absorbed in transcendence, and he's saying under disciplinary regulations and vows. He was engaging in Vaidhi Bhakti. Under disciplinary regulations and vows. Sri Narada Uvacha Bhavat Bhavatanudita prayam yasho bhagavato malam enaivaso natushyeta manyeta darshanam kilam. Sri Narada said, "You have not actually broadcast the sublime and spotless glories of the personality of Godhead. That philosophy which does not satisfy the transcendental senses of the Lord is considered worthless." That philosophy which does not satisfy the transcendental senses of the Lord is considered worthless. So he's very clear. Sri Narad Muni is not wasting any time. He's not cutting any corners in being able to make a statement to Sri Vyasadeva saying that you have really not exclusively focused on the spotless devotional service to the Supreme Lord, transcendental loving devotional service, the glorification of the Supreme Lord for the purpose of giving pleasure to the senses of those who are attached to the Supreme Lord. Pleasure to the senses of those who are extraordinarily attached to Krishna can only happen if they were to hear Katha, which is 100% about Krishna. They are not interested in hearing about Katha or any particular procedure which talks of liberation, which talks of material opulences and so on and so forth. It's very clear. The philosophy which does not satisfy the transcendental senses of the Lord is considered worthless. Who is the transcendental senses of the Lord? The Lord himself expands into his devotees. We are parts and parcels. And the Bhagavatas, the devotees, they have to feel pleasure. Their pleasure is completely dependent on the glorification of the Lord. Harikatha or Harikirtan, these are the two sources of pleasure to the devotee. Right? Activities associated with Hari, because they are the parts and parcels of Krishna. They are the transcendental senses. So if the transcendental senses, which is the devotees of the Lord, if they don't feel pleasure from literature and from work and so on, then that particular literature and work and so on is not going to satisfy you. Okay, because you have failed to broadcast that kind of activity. You have failed to broadcast sublime literature which enthuses one who is attached to Krishna. Text 9. Yata dharmadasya charta munivaryānukirtitaha na tata vasudevasya mahimahi anuvarnitaha. Although, great sage, you have very broadly described the four principles, beginning with religious performances, you have not described the glories of the Supreme Personality Vasudeva. You have described dharma. You have described the obtaining of artha. You have described the whole objective of satisfying the senses, kama. You have also spoken about moksha. But you have not focused 100% on glorifying Vasudeva. And that glorification of Vasudeva is the only way to please the transcendental senses of the devotees and the Lord. Na yadvachaschitra padam harerva yaso jagat pavitram pragrirnata karrichit tadvayasam tirtam musanti manasa nayatra hamsa niramanti ushikshayah. Those words which do not describe the glories of the Lord, who alone can sanctify the atmosphere of the whole universe, are considered by saintly persons to be like unto a place of pilgrimage for crows. Since the all-perfect persons are inhabitants of the transcendental abode, they do not derive any pleasure there. So who is interested? For those who are transcendently situated, or those who are interested in glorification of the Lord, and those who are considered to be the senses of the Lord. Krishna derives pleasure through the senses of his devotees, the transcendental senses. Those are his transcendental senses. The pure devotees are considered to be extensions, qualitative extensions. If literature, activity, subject matter does not enthuse such personalities who are 100% focused in giving pleasure to the senses of Krishna, then such activity is considered to be, or such gatherings are considered to be a pilgrimage for crows. What do crows do? They sit and talk nonsense, right? It's a disturbance, actually. When you have many, many crows sitting together, it's unusual to see it here in the West. In India, it's very common to see a group of crows. And all they do is create extraordinary noise, which is very disturbing. So that particular statement here is the activity of those whose engagement is not focused on the transcendental science of Krishna consciousness is considered to be like an assembly of crows. People who are swan-like, like the devotees, will not be able to derive any pleasure in such places. Tadvag visargo janatagya viplavo yasmin pratishlokam abadvati api namani anantasya yaso niktani yat shanvanti gayanti gananti sadavaha. This is an interesting verse, verse 11. On the other hand, that literature which is full of descriptions of the transcendental glories of the name, fame, forms, pastimes, etc., of the unlimited Supreme Lord, is a different creation, full of transcendental words directed towards bringing about a revolution in the impious lives of this world's misdirected civilization. Such transcendental literatures, even though imperfectly composed, are heard, sung, and accepted by purified men who are thoroughly honest. Interesting, because they use the word abbaddavati. Abbaddavati means that the composition of such works may not match the extraordinary poetic meter or match strict rules of Sanskrit. It may not match grammatical rules. It may not be composed in a manner which is, approved of by scholars of Sanskrit and so on and so forth. But because it glorifies the Supreme Lord, it is completely accepted, heard, and sung by purified men. Men who are purified of material consciousness will have the ability to focus on the essence. The essence is the glorification of Krishna. The essence is the ability to understand transcendental subject matter. They are not interested in poetic meter. They are not interested in pronunciation. They are not interested in, the various compositions which normally are required if one has to do something of seriousness in the material world. For material consumption, if someone had to write, for example, Sanskrit poetry praising a king, it had to have all the qualities. It had to particularly be very stringent in terms of grammatical rules. It had to be stringent in terms of application, composition, so on and so forth. Otherwise, it would be rejected by other scholars because they're so focused on finding fault. That's the assembly of crows, complaining constantly. Oh, this is your fault, that is your fault, so on and so forth. Assembly of crows. But when transcendental subject matter is composed, when transcendental subject matter is put together and is shared, those who are pure have the ability, like a swan, hamsa is the word being used here. The hamsa or swan has the ability to separate good from bad. It is said that if you were to pour milk into water, it has the ability to remove milk and drink milk and nectar from the water. It will not be drinking water, but it has the ability to separate the two liquids. Milk is superior to water. It can separate the milk. So hamsa is the word being used here, who are pure. They will not be looking for grammatical rules. They would not be looking for composition. They would not be looking for perfection in Sanskrit, so on and so forth. They are looking for transcendence. They will become completely absorbed. So abbaddavati, irregularly composed. In spite of being irregularly composed, it will be glorified. Transcendental names. It will be glorified. Shanvanti, Gayanti, Grananti, Sadhavaha. Sadhavaha. If one is a sadhu, he is not going to be focused so much on Sanskrit. He is going to be focused more on the essence. And that is being shown here in 1.5.11. It is interesting to see that being written in the context of Sri Narada, Sri Vyasadeva's statement too. Narad Muni, and Narad Muni's reply saying, this has nothing to do with poetic excellence. This has to do with glorification and coming in touch with transcendence. Okay, let's see if. All right, I'm going to stop with the last verse and then we'll take it up. Naishkarmyam api achyuta bhava varjitam na sobate jnanam malam niranjanam kutah punasasvad abhadram ishwarena charpitam karma yad api akarnam akaranam. Knowledge of self-realization, even though free from all material affinity, does not look well if devoid of a conception of the infallible. What then is the use of fruitive activities which are naturally painful from the very beginning and transient by nature if they are not utilized for the devotional service of the Lord? So it's a perfect statement. I'm going to leave this statement for the next week. So I'm going to stop at text 12. Okay, we have covered 12 verses today of the 5th chapter. So I'm going to start from 12 because this is actually a very defining verse. It has some nice points. We'll talk about it again. I will see if I can take some of your questions before I conclude today's session. All right. Let's see. How can one be focused? How can one be focused throughout the day and be in Krishna conscious? How do we respect and receive suggestions from people even though they are not in favor of us and respond politely, the same as Dhruva Maharaj? First question, how can one be focused throughout the day and be in Krishna consciousness? The most important thing is that let's assume that someone is a father of a child. If the identity of being a father of a child is fully known to that person, does he forget that identity while he is at work? He focuses at work. He is able to deliver whatever is to be done during the day's work, but is he able to forget that he is the father of someone? He is not. In a similar manner, the deeper and deeper we go into Krishna consciousness and we understand our specific relationship with Krishna, to the extent to which we understand our relationship with Krishna, to that extent we will be Krishna conscious even at work, even while doing something which is apparently not related to Krishna, because our sambandha is firmly established and we are able to act according to that. That is the answer for the first question, as how to focus throughout the day and be in Krishna conscious. First, we become Krishna conscious. Being Krishna conscious means knowing who we are, knowing who is Krishna. And then after being Krishna conscious, we also can work. That is what Arjuna did. He became Krishna conscious fully after Bhagavad Gita was spoken. That did not deter him from being a 100%, efficient Kshatriya on the battlefield. Your second question, how do we respect and receive suggestions from people even though they are not in favor of us and respond politely the same way as Dhruva Maharaj? Well, that is a lesson for us, that we ought to be like a swan. We constantly have to meditate on wanting to improve ourselves, and that is very easily possible if we are in the mode of goodness. The mode of goodness would allow us to be able to distinguish what is not required and what is required and be able to accept what is favorable. We will not get so caught up with the way something is being told to us. We will get more caught up with what is being told and whether it has any meaning, right? So there was this wonderful devotee in our movement, Mother Hladini. She's a Prabhupada disciple. She has left her body several years back. But there are many, many different stories of how she used to respond to different tricky situations in temple environments even. Temple environments can also be quite complex. Even if you are in an ISKCON center, there can be complex interactions because we are in touch with material energy in certain ways. So there was this example of a person who had this habit of wanting to order people in a very obnoxious way. So the devotee would come into the kitchen and yell at someone saying the garbage has to be taken out. So Mother Hladini, her response was not to the yelling, but to the fact that the garbage had to be taken out. So she used to focus on what is required and not so much on how it is delivered. That is not possible unless one is highly situated in Krishna conscious. At least, at the very least, one has to be in the mode of goodness. So, if practically, if we are in the mode of goodness, we have the ability to be able to take such instructions to heart. Dhruva was a child. He was simple. That was his great advantage. He was simple in mind. He was not complex. So he was able to say that, oh, you're not saying this with venom. You're not saying it with enviousness. You are giving me instructions. So he did not judge the source as being venomous. He took it that this is instruction which is coming for my favor, and he just followed it. He was a child. So simplicity is a great asset because we don't judge so much, but we try and look at what is most essential and we act upon it. That was shown by Dhruva Maharaj. Okay, so Lord Rama was very strict in executing his dharma, which represents the mode of passion. But he was the Lord himself who is beyond the three modes of material nature. How do we reconcile between these two? Well, Lord Rama was transcendental. Someone who is transcendental acts in transcendence. They are not acting based on directions of the modes of nature. His function externally was as a king. So he was acting out of dharma. He was exemplifying how dharma is to be executed to those who are in the mode of passion. He was wanting to say that don't become passionate and start thinking about your body and your pleasure, but focus on your duty. So he was transcendently situated. He was not under the supervision of the material modes of nature. So there is nothing to reconcile here. That's the point I was trying to make. He was transcendently situated in the function of a Kshatriya, and he executed his dharma in a manner which is exemplary so that other Kshatriyas could follow and they could perform duty instead of becoming bewildered. I think I'm missing a question. Perhaps. Okay. Krishna also states to execute a dharma, but without expectation of results. How do we understand or make sure that the execution of a dharma is beyond the mode of passion? The way we understand is of two kinds, right? Number one is we enact whatever we are meant to do very efficiently as if it were to be dependent on us. But internally, we are of the consciousness that the results are Krishna's, and Krishna will determine the results. We are not going to be attached to what the results are. So externally, we act according to whatever is required because that is your dharma. So if you're in an office situation, you execute. There's nothing wrong with putting in a lot of effort and doing whatever you're meant to do at your place of work efficiently. But being attached to the results of such work is problematic. That is where the problem arises, where you do everything and then start thinking that I must get promoted, or start thinking I must get a raise, or I'm better than the other person, I should get some praise or whatever. That becomes problematic because now you're entering into gains from work. Krishna is saying that whatever you have to gain from work is mine. The results are mine. Your job is to merely execute based on your understanding of your dharma. So if you are in a position in a certain place of work, act according to your duty in that place of work. Be passionate about producing good results in terms of putting your effort. But do not expect that the results belong to you. The results could be good, the results could be bad. Okay? And in fact, the beauty is in the material world, you don't have to really manage it. One will experience good results and bad results automatically because it's a matter of course. It is not something where we have to manage it extraordinarily. All we need to do is manage our effort. You manage your effort and do your very best, but do not get too caught up with what it is going to result in. That's the function. It is beyond the mode of passion, or whether it is beyond the material mode of passion or not, is a matter of your consciousness. The higher you are in terms of understanding your place in the spiritual sky and your sambandha with Krishna, less attached you will be to the material world. Right? So that's a matter of your internal consciousness. So we are not so much talking about being detached from doing our duty. We are talking about not being attached to the results of such duty, because that is where we get misled. What happens if you're attached to results? If there are good results, we will do more of such activity. If there's some discomfort from such something, we'll stop doing it. It's problematic. It is better for us to focus on being efficient and focus on the effort. The results themselves belong to Krishna. Whether we get promoted for it, we get accolades for it, we get a pat on the back, or we get abused for it, it's up to him. Okay? That should be our understanding. All right. So I don't have any more questions. So I'll stop right here, and we'll continue again on Thursday to conclusion of the 5th chapter of the 1st canto. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.